Chapter 19. Brooke.
Fred's diner wasn't decent enough for him, I muttered to Raven as we grabbed our trays and headed to the table where her dad sat. He had a huge visitor badge pinned to his jacket. It was the only way I could get you an audience with His Majesty, Raven snapped back. Be grateful you don't have to worry about the condescending stares of our peers because my daddy insisted on having lunch at school. She was right. People were glancing our way more than usual, but it wasn't because he was her dad. Dr. Haskins was an odd man. He dressed like he lived in a dumpster. His hair was a mess of ratted gray on his head. The swirls in it reminded me of a bird's nest. He looked over his shoulder periodically as if sure someone was behind him with a knife. By human standards, he looked like he couldn't be trusted to feed a goldfish. But looks could be deceiving. Dr. Haskins was brilliant. Even without his security cameras in and around his house, he saw everything. He noticed everything. Lying to him terrified me because I knew I couldn't stump him. Raven had no such fear. She had been training for this her whole life, getting better year after year at the art of deception in order to get what little freedom she had. Thank you for agreeing to have lunch with me today, Dr. Haskins, I said, trying to put a chipper tone in my voice to drown out the nerves. Apparently I was trying too hard because Raven gave me a stern look. Want anything, Dad? She asked, scooting her lunchbox a fraction of an inch closer to him. No, thank you, Pumpkin. I already ate. Journalism, huh? He asked, shifting the conversation to me. It seemed like the pleasantries were over. Yes, you know I have struggled with academics in the past, and I would like to take steps to further my chances of getting into college, I explained. Raven had prepped me extensively all morning. I hoped it didn't sound too rehearsed. Why now? He asked, looking beyond me like he was scanning for threats. I nodded in understanding. I believe that is the pressure of my final year at the academy. The reality of life after high school has hit me head on, and I realize how vastly unprepared I am for it. I'm determined to get my grades up this year, but even if I do that, it's going to take more than mediocre grades to get me financial assistance, or even admission. He glanced over his shoulder again as if he heard someone coming up behind him. In reality, dozens of students were passing behind him, their noise barely making a drop in the cafeteria's symphony of laughter and plastic trays. He cleared his throat and came back to our conversation. I respect that. I respect effort. What can I do to help? I wanted to sigh in relief, but Raven warned me not to look overexcited. I was merely through the front door of the castle. The maiden was still beyond the dragon, high in the tower. Raven told me that you used to be on the volunteer fire department for Midnight Springs, I explained. She said you may know where I can find more information about fires from back then. Why would you want to know about a fire? Dr. Haskins asked. I felt like I was on trial. I want to cover something that could happen to anyone, but isn't as normal as a car accident. Since I don't have a connection to the fire department of today, my connection with you means it would be a fire of the past, I reasoned. It sounded believable. He nodded. Fair enough. I stole a glance at Raven. She was ignoring me and looking satisfied with her coaching thus far. Are there any fires that stand out to you from your time as a fireman? I asked. Anything that seems particularly newsworthy? He looked at me oddly. Perhaps. Shouldn't you be writing this down? Get a pen and paper. I grabbed materials Raven had given me the day before and poised myself, ready to hear his stories. What kinds of details are you looking for? Destruction level? Loss of life? Or something more positive, like saving someone or a fire being put out before it could spread? He guessed. When someone dies in a fire, are their bodies able to be identified? I asked. The question had been plaguing me for days, so I couldn't help myself from asking it first. Normal house fires don't get hot enough to burn a person's bones, so yes, we can find the bones in the wreckage if someone was in the house, he explained, as if he were describing the weather. And if the bones weren't there, I asked, then what? His long, wiry eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? If you expected another set of bones in the house but didn't find them, what happened then? I asked. I thought it seemed like a fairly normal question, but his reaction was anything but normal. He squinted at me, looked both ways, then leaned in close. I will not be made a fool of, Brooke Romero. Dad, what do you mean? Raven asked, jumping to my rescue. No one is trying to make a fool out of you. You girls need to let it go. It was years ago, probably 13 or more. The boy likely got out of the house and passed away in the woods. The case is closed, as it should be, he stated. Sir, I don't know what you're referring to, I said, trying to rein in the situation. He definitely knew about Peter's fire. Grown-ups dealt with that case, some of us for a very long time, trying to figure out what happened to him. You won't be able to spin a story out of what little is there. Give it up and try something else. Better yet, stay away from fires entirely. I have to leave. He stood quickly, knocking his chair on its back in the process. "Dad, stop," Raven said, grabbing his hand. His frantic eyes found hers. "You can't go looking for the Murphy boy," he said. "Promise me you won't, Raven. Promise me." "I won't," she agreed, standing to give him a hug. "I promise." "Good. Be good." He kissed her forehead. He left without a backward glance, without even picking up the chair he knocked over. Students went back to their lives as Raven sat the chair upright, forgetting us again. Dr. Haskins scurried out of the cafeteria like it was on fire. "He's too good," I said. "How did you know exactly what to say to get him to react?" Raven smirked. "It's a gift. Besides, we aren't sure it's even the right name." "We got a name." "That's more than we had before," I said. I couldn't wait to dig deeper into it. Study hall didn't come fast enough. "I need that computer," Nash said to me as soon as I sat in front of it. "Sorry, I need it worse. It's only for today," I said, starting up the search engine. It was the last one without someone sitting in front of it. I was lucky to get there a second before he did. "You're just searching for something? Do it from your phone," he demanded. "Her phone is broken," Raven lied. "Can't you do whatever you need to do on your phone?" He shook his head. "No, the program I need is downloaded on this computer and this computer alone." "Can't you hack into it with your phone or something?" Raven argued. "Aren't you supposed to be the master of hacking into things?" "Do you even know how computers work?" Nash said, his blonde mohawk gleaming under the fluorescent light. Raven was right. I knew for a fact that people paid Nash for test answers that he hacked from the teacher's computers. Raven rolled her eyes and shooed him away with her hand. To my surprise, he huffed and left us alone. Murphy Fire 13 years ago showed no obvious results. "Try putting the actual year," Raven suggested. Still, nothing. "I'll add Midnight Springs," I said, refining my search. Articles popped up from several newspapers and TV stations about the missing Murphy boy. They all had their different theories as to what happened. Someone kidnapped the child and committed arson. The child escaped the fire only to starve or be eaten in the woods. Or the child was never there, and whoever was watching the kid at the time doesn't want to come clean. What they all agreed on, though, was that Mr. and Mrs. Murphy's remains were found in the rubble, and their 8-year-old sons were not. "That's my dad," Raven said, pointing to a picture of Dr. Haskins in the article. "We need to put this tragedy behind us," he said in the interview. "We don't know the way that the boy passed, but we can be most certain that he has by now. It's been over 6 months. Thankfully, he doesn't leave behind mournful parents who won't give up until a body is found. As a community, we can mourn the family as a whole and move on." "I bet that was the last interview they let him do," Raven said. "He isn't very tactful. He basically said, 'At least they all died.'" There was an article more focused on the missing boy than the fire, complete with his last school picture. "Thomas Murphy," I whispered. "Peter's real name is Thomas." I printed out everything I could as the final bell rang, anxious to get Millie to Charles's and find Peter.